The Biden Justice Department has been politicized. That's the message this morning from not just Donald Trump, but from President Joe Biden himself. The president issuing a full and unconditional pardon to his son Hunter after repeatedly insisting in public that he wouldn't do it. And to defend his decision, the president adopted an argument that could have come straight out of Donald Trump's playbook. Blame your political opponents and claim unfair persecution. President Biden said this, quote, "The charges in his cases came about only after several of my political opponents in Congress instigated them to attack me and oppose my election." The president adding, quote, "No reasonable person who looks at the facts of Hunter's cases can reach any other conclusion than Hunter was singled out only because he is my son. And that is wrong," end quote. President Biden pardoning his son not just for the gun crimes for which he was convicted and not just for the tax crimes for which he pled guilty. Instead, Biden gave his son an extraordinarily sweeping pardon for any and all crimes he committed, may have committed, or even merely been involved in at any point in the last 10 years. That broad language, unlike any in recent history and reminiscent only of President Gerald Ford's pardon of Richard Nixon for, quote, all offenses against the United States, end quote, that the former president had or may have committed during his entire presidency. Trying to explain his decision to Americans, President Biden made a personal appeal. He said this, quote, "I hope Americans will understand why a father and a president would come to this decision," he said last night. Understand? Americans might, though they'll have to be forgiven for thinking that all of this was off the table.
Is there any possibility that the president would end up pardoning his son?
No.
Well,
I just said no. I just answered.
When would the president pardon or commute his son if he's convicted?
So I've answered this question before. It was asked of me not too long ago, a couple of weeks ago, and I was very clear and I said no.
You said before that the president would not pardon his son. Is that still the case?
Nothing has changed. That is still the case.
And have you ruled out a pardon for your son?
Yes. I said I abide by the jury decision. I will do that, and I will not pardon him.
I could speak for the president, and he said he would not pardon his son.
Does the president have any intention of pardoning him?
We've been asked that question multiple times. Our answer stands, which is no.
Well, it stood until last night. Joining us now, Saleha Mohsen, senior Washington correspondent for Bloomberg, Isaac Dovere, CNN senior reporter, Megan Hayes, former director of message planning for the Biden White House, and Brad Todd, Republican strategist and CNN political commentator. Welcome to all of you. Megan Hayes, look, many of our viewers have gotten to know you, but you really do know this family. You worked inside this White House for a very long time. Can you help us understand how they got to this decision? Because I have to say, I've talked to some people who thought the president wouldn't get there because he was concerned about his legacy. Obviously, something really changed.
Yeah, I'm a little surprised. I didn't actually think he'd get there till much later in the last couple months of his term. But I do think with some of the nominations that Trump has put up, I think it probably caused a little bit of worry for him. But also, I think people have to remember the president has lost 2 children already, and he does not need to lose another one to more political, witch hunts that the president's calling them. He worries about Hunter going to jail. There's a lot of things wrapped up in this, but I think at the end of the day, the president made a decision as a father to keep his son out of jail and out of harm's way moving forward.
Just to pick up on something you said at the top of your answer, you think the selection, for example, of Kash Patel played into this decision?
I think that some of these nominations that Trump has been putting forward and leaving this in the hands of other folks, I think is worrisome to the president. I mean, President Trump and Kash Patel have said they are going to go after their political enemies. They're going after retribution. I think that Hunter Biden has been seen as the person that they've gone after many times, and I don't think the president's going to leave that to chance when he leaves office. He, again, does not want to lose another son. He has lost 2 children already, and he does not want this to go on any further once he leaves office.
Isaac Dovere, what's your reporting kind of behind the scenes on how this came to be, but also, I mean, we have seen some Democratic reaction already criticizing the president for this. I mean, we saw a tweet from the Colorado governor, a Democrat, Jared Polis, saying it's bad precedent that could be abused by later presidents. Congressman Greg Stanton said, "I respect President Biden, but I think he got this one wrong." And then Joe Walsh, who is a former congressman, Republican congressman, who's become a Trump critic. He was on MSNBC. He put it this way. Let's play it because it's kind of a succinct way to look at it. Take a look.
So the next time any of us complain about anything Trump does, this pardon is just deflating. Nobody's above the law, we've been screaming. Well, Joe Biden just made clear his son Hunter is above the law. Donald Trump lies every time he opens his mouth, we've been screaming. Joe Biden repeatedly lied about this. The politicization of the justice system, Donald Trump and his people have been screaming. Well, that's exactly what Biden said here.
Does he have a point? And what are you hearing from other Democrats?
This is the kind of thing that does breed cynicism in people. And it's that cynicism that in part Donald Trump plays off of in making the moves that he does when he says, look, it's all rigged against everybody. The Justice Department is politicized, right? And now Joe Biden has said that. His Justice Department under his administration was what was pursuing these cases, was what had gotten the guilty verdict in the gun case, and we were waiting for the sentencing in this tax case. That's an issue for Joe Biden to face now when he has put himself forward not just as an opposition to Trump, but as someone who is standing on principle and on norms and on keeping in that way. I do think, though, it's important we can hold multiple thoughts in our heads at the same time, right? That Donald Trump will perhaps use this, and certainly allies will use this as justification or something to point to when he does things, whether it's pardoning people who were involved in the January 6th riot or other things. But it's not like Donald Trump wasn't going to do some of those things anyway, right? And so, but it does muddy all the waters of people who wanted to see Biden, if nothing else, as somebody who was standing up for all of these ideals that he was talking about for the last bunch of years. Yeah, fair. Although we should also acknowledge, Saleha, that this is not the first president to pardon someone who he is related to in some way, including, I mean, with Donald Trump, it was an in-law. But someone in his family nonetheless.
And in-law, Charles Kushner, Jared's father, who he has just nominated to be his ambassador to France. I would have to agree that there is a little bit of a precedent being set that now when Democrats are sort of trying to figure out where do they go from here after having lost so badly in the presidential elections and down ballot races, they're trying to rebuild the party and they're left with an aged president leaving, former head of the Democratic Party after being president, and now he's done this. It's going to be really hard in the next 2 years as Democrats are trying to position themselves heading into midterms to also serve as bulwarks against some of Trump's plans, especially now that we've heard about his FBI nomination.
Brad Todd, you and I we saw each other on Sunday. We were talking about kind of the ways in which, Republicans obviously feel like the Department of Justice has been weaponized against them in political ways. Do you buy? I mean, Joe Biden is basically saying, look, he would never have been prosecuted if he wasn't my son, and that this is political as well. Do you buy that?
There's no question. A lot of Justice Department prosecutions are a result of the fact that the DOJ decides they can get press out of them. They are sensitive to media pressure. They're sensitive to political pressure. Joe Biden and Donald Trump are now saying the same thing. And I think that makes the case for why the DOJ has to be cleaned up. New ethos of operation has to happen there. But I think one thing about this pardon that's striking to me is that it's not for the gun and the tax charge. This is for everything he did in the last 11 years. Coincidentally, that's when he went on the board of Burisma, the Ukrainian gas company. I think that there's going to be a lot more investigation into what Hunter Biden's dealings were with Burisma, and now that he's been pardoned, he doesn't need the Fifth Amendment. He can tell us everything. He can tell us everything about his co-conspirators. He can tell us everything about other people who did business with him. A lot more is now on the table. And so I think Joe Biden, in overreaching here with an 11-year pardon, he may have opened more fodder for investigation from the House.
But that's the point. In the mind of the president, it seems that there was this fear that there would be vindictive retribution prosecutions of Hunter Biden under a Trump-run Justice Department. And look, it is definitely the case that some of the attention to Hunter Biden is because of Joe Biden. I remember still being in South Carolina the day after the South Carolina primary that Joe Biden won in 2020 when he turned his campaign around, and all of a sudden Senator Ron Johnson was asking for information about Burisma. So, but that's the way it goes. It's also the case that Hunter Biden clearly, over the course of his career, benefited from being Joe Biden's son.
Just watch. More people will be pardoned by this administration who dealt with Hunter Biden.